everyone, and welcome to the American Scouser podcast. Monday night, we are back. The trio is here after a win this time. Doesn't get any better than this. It probably could. It could not be kind of like crappy cold outside, but it is November. I guess shouldn't complain too much. I am your host, as always, Timucin here in, like I said, kind of a cold, getting colder Chicago. I think the thing about living in the Midwest, Bickler used to be in this neck of the woods, is you just know what's coming behind. So it's not as bad now, but the fear of what's coming behind is basically what sets the mood down. What? Bickler is in the house, the hood, the stash, and the beards today.
Yeah,
it's pirates with a hoodie look.
It's cold here, and unlike the Midwest, like when cold happens, it happens literally overnight. Whereas in the Midwest, at least like towards September, it starts to get cold and your body gets acclimated because it's like we're getting ready to go into the frozen tundra. Like I hate the South because essentially the South is just like England, where it's just damp and cold during the winter. Like no snow, none of the fun stuff, just fucking wet and cold. And we got that overnight. So yeah, I'm cold.
Gally, how is it in your neck of the woods?
Cold. It's not terribly cold. I think it'll get worse before it gets a lot better. Like I went out this morning though, and you had to start the car and warm it up.
Oh,
it also
really?
doesn't help. Well, it doesn't help that I leave my house at 5:30 in the morning, and that really means that this week I was leaving at 4:30 in the morning because we set the clocks back an hour on Saturday. So it made this morning a little bit rougher, but I will admit it is nice that the sun comes up earlier. So halfway through that ride, the sun actually comes up instead of it being pitch dark the entire time. And now the key is leaving work early enough in the afternoon that I actually get home before it gets pitch dark. Because that's the most depressing part about setting the clocks back is you go to work and it's dark and you get out and it's dark and you just hate your life all year round.
Yeah, I remember those days, and that's when the hour got changed back. You're like, God damn it, this really sucks, kind of a deal. And I hate to sound like an old guy, but yes, this whole hour change thing. Can we just set it once and get it done and over with? I still got to fix the one in front of me over here, still an hour ahead. I probably won't. By March, it'll be right again. So that's usually how I go around doing these things. But like Turkey, they do not change it. And glad I just realized
that does not shock me at all.
Yeah,
actually, that
like
makes the most
years
sense.
ago with this new regime, they were like, you know what? We don't give a damn. Like, we're not changing it anymore. So now it's like freaking 9-hour difference.
Did you know that
it used to change all the time? They stopped it like 3 years ago or so.
Did you know that they don't observe daylight savings times on Indian reservations?
How does that work?
I mean, it seems like a weird spot to put your foot in, but like, I mean, like they, I don't know why we do it anyway. I mean, like I know we used to do it for like farm reasons,
agricultural.
Right?
Yeah, agricultural.
Now that we bought out small farms, like, do we need to do this anymore? Can we just like?
Exactly. Yeah, that's another good point. Like Arizona doesn't.
Arizona doesn't half of Indiana not, and the other half does, which is even weirder. Like.
Yeah,
there's a few of those states
even more complicated than they have.
Halfway through the state, it's a different time zone. You're like, this isn't right. Your entire state should be required to be the same time. Like, I should not literally travel back in time going through New Mexico. Enough can happen to me in New Mexico
for an hour, literally, because it's like they have a different hour over there. So, yes, but. Yeah, Shelton has to put away Halloween now. See, that's
if I had
about this. It's just that's the worst part.
If I had as much Halloween shit as frickin' he does, I wouldn't get that shit away until Christmas. And then by Christmas, I'd be like, you know what? Let's just dress that asshole Santa up. Let's just take that skeleton, put a winter hat on him, put a jacket around him, and like a couple reindeer. I'm sure he's got a reindeer skeleton.
Do you think Shelton like freaks himself out when he's putting the stuff away in the dark? Like he's like, he's like, I like mix it up. Yeah.
I know his wife loves it, but I'm not sure I could live there for the 2.5, 3 weeks that stuff's up. Like at some point, I would literally look out my own window and just literally just get afraid to leave my house, mainly because I live in the middle of the woods. And it would take.
If I'm him, I'm not even removing it. It's not like there's a home association there. He lives in the middle of the woods. I'm sure there's no like woods.
But that's also the terrifying part is he lives in like where the hills have eyes anyway. So it's like I'm not pulling that shit out there in the dark.
It's good to see that he has a skeleton Santa already, so he doesn't have to dress that one up like Santa.
Yeah, we gotta go. Like that should be when we do a fundraiser. That should be where we do it, like in the middle of the forests, with in front of the skeletons and stuff like that. Talk about
We could
environment.
barely run this stream for 24 hours with hardwired internet. And you think Skylink is gonna get this thing broadcasted? We'll
Yeah,
raise
good point.
13.
Good
We'll
point.
raise $13 and we'll eat exceptionally for 72
I'll just
hours.
adjust
That's
the
all
antennas.
that'll happen.
I'll just have the rabbit ears. I'll I'll be fine.
We'll have to keep moving the cameras because the smoke is blocking it and everything. So yeah, it would be a lot of
We'll
work.
just be
But
walking in trays of meats.
hey, actually, I wouldn't mind that part of it. That's a good thing. But let's get to the weekend. Good weekend. Finally, we get to talk about a solid performance, a good weekend and stuff. So I was going to ask first in terms of like what's impressed you guys the most, but I wanted to keep the why afterwards. And the more I thought about it, that's going to be really tricky to do. So let's start with the why. Bickler, why do you think, what is the biggest reason behind how this team looked compared to what we've seen before? Is it attitude? Is it Villa kind of playing into our hands a little bit? What is it?
I think it's two things. I think it's the way Villa plays that they wanted to play out. And I think it also has to do with the fact that we rode some fortune and didn't concede right away.
Yeah, that makes sense, right? And that was the thing, I guess, Galdi. Like, I didn't know. That's a huge part of it. And, it's kind of like a Matush type of a bit of both, a bit of everything, kind of like an answer to this. But it is probably what Villa did a lot. But I feel like that's also unfair on, like, the effort we saw. And some of the really good play we saw, which another reason I was going to throw out there is the familiarity of using the midfield from last season.
Sure. But I don't think it was the midfield from last season that actually helped us win this match. As much as they were a huge part of the success we had, Paul's right. Styles make fights. And we've run into a bunch of guys there are a bunch of teams. If we were boxers, right, the argument would be we didn't match up well to have good fights, and they matched up better against our weaknesses. Brentford, Palace. I mean, let's be real. Chelsea played out. They just outplayed us. And then we lost on a late moment where we could have gotten a point with an easy draw if we just saw out the match like professionals. And we didn't do that. The best thing for me was the performance from the standpoint that once we got the lead, and there were two opportunities for them to score before we had our real good chances that came in the first half. So Paul's right. If that ball from Morgan Rogers goes in, could be a completely different thing. Because once again, we're 5 minutes in, first opportunity, ball in the back of the net. Would have been hard to come out of. And I don't think the crowd would have been chanting Arne Slot's name the way it was in the first half to make sure that the manager knew that he had their backing and that all this talk on social media and Jordan Gerrard's page really isn't speaking for all of us Liverpool supporters, but just for people looking for attention. I think what it really comes down to for me is how they played as a unit all across the match. They defended together, they pressed together, though at times it was still a little discombobulated. And there were some issues with Gravenberch going forward, and maybe we'll get to some of the points where, like, when we went up 2-0, we showed a couple of those signs from earlier in the year when we took leads. But I was really excited that they were able to find a way and stick it in and get the job done, get the clean sheet. And I think the fact that the manager makes one sub lets you know he picked this side because he thought they could get the job done. It was a good matchup for him. And then he wasn't going to go tinker with it too much. It'll be interesting to see what he does tomorrow. We got a whole show to talk about all of it. But for me, it was the continuity of the side definitely helped. You're right.
I think that was the biggest thing in midfield. Like Brian Shelton was talking about, like Mecca in the 10, which I mean, that's the good thing about this midfield that we had last year is apart from Gravenberch, probably, you could not tell who's where, like who's the 8, who's the 10. It's kind of like constantly changing, and it's kind of like harder to defend as well. And they were kind of like, winning the ball. All three of them can win the ball. All three of them can create and stuff like that. But I guess my thing is when we talk about, being able to, like, the familiarity and the performance, Bickler, what I almost felt like, going back to what Gally's saying about, like, the substitutions, I almost felt like he did not want to mess with it. I mean, it was like a Klopp-like method of, like, he didn't want to mess with it. Normally, you would see the substitutions along the way. Is that because there was nobody on the bench who could come out and do what somebody on the pitch is doing there? or was there a little bit of Slot worrying that tinkering this and blowing it up is gonna make everything a lot worse than it already is, as far as he is concerned?
I mean, I take C, all of the above. I think it had to do with the bench. I also think it was a major get right moment. Like the manager had to, he had to get this one right. And I think most importantly for the players, they had to have something to build on, right? Like I think this is a side that's lost its swagger in its teeth. And like, I think that this was an opportunity to get it back. I think the thing that made me the most hopeful in this is because I still think this side has major issues. I think this is a side and transition, and I don't know. I think what was sold Florian Wirtz was a different setup and a different side than we're seeing now, and we're having to deal with a lack thereof or a plan that didn't go according to the original plan for the transition. And I think there is going to be some issues still this year, but I think this side needed something to build off of. And what really made me hopeful is like this seemed like for the first time in a couple months that I can remember a side who had good body language, helps when you're winning, and B also was like communicating effectively on the pitch. And I think that's where something like Robbo really helps, because I think Robbo comes in and gives you that. Like we lost that Jordan Henderson, and I don't know that we ever got it back. When you look at the players between, like, we know Verge is like the captain here, right? But if you look at a side with Kirkez, Bradley, Maka, Gravenberch, even Dom, like none of those guys are directing traffic. None of those guys are chattering. And I think with Robbo, and I think it frees Verge up to do some more of that. But I also think Robbo is really good at directing traffic. I think Robbo had the ultimate professional match where he comes in and stabilizes a back four. And I don't think it's as much I don't think it has as much to do with Verge not trusting Kirkez as much as it does Robbo knows really how to absorb pressure, sit back, and release the right passes. And I think Kirkez is still finding a rhythm and learning how to make those passes when the press is triggered. And I think this is a setup that didn't allow for teams to sort of focus on that. So I just thought it was a big, big match for Robbo. Still issues. And I think this midfield right now, Dom has for sure been the player of the year in this side, in my opinion. But I think this midfield, when we're playing, I think it really goes as far as Gravenberch will take it. He was back to his best for the first time in a long time.
Yeah, I do want to talk about that. I mean, I think one thing with Robertson, I was talking about it this morning. I think could be actually like Angel was saying it when we were watching like the game and like the highlights and stuff like that. I mean, Gakpo was a lot more doing a lot more defensive work, maybe because Robo wasn't his asshole game, like yelling at him, whereas maybe Kirkez lets him get away with stuff, and it's a bit easier for Robo to say, hey, get your ass back tracking over here, because I felt both wingers did a lot more work defensively than normal. By the way, going to the chats, Alan, our regular over here, hope you're doing better, man. He says he's suffering from sleep apnea, only slept 12 hours in 7 days. But then he does say he's going to bed, so we just found another way to advertise our podcast. 10 minutes in, and Alan's problems are solved. He was probably
Sleep
like, man,
apnea.
I can't wait for the Monday night podcast, so they put me to sleep over here. But
Alan, you got to get a sleep apnea machine, buddy. My dad has one. It's one of those Darth Vader masks. You got to get one.
Oh, those things. Yeah, I always, I mean, I guess you eventually get used to it. Like, it's almost like you're not wearing it. But I was like, I don't know if I could ever sleep in this thing, kind of a deal. Just
like,
well,
if you need one, it's actually unsafe not to sleep.
I was just going to say, the option is either you sleep with one of those, Angie doesn't sleep for the rest of her life, or she wakes up one night and questions whether or not you stop breathing about 3:30 in the morning. Because like people don't realize sleep apnea is basically you dying in the middle of the night constantly for short little bursts.
You stop breathing.
You stop breathing.
No, I don't know if he means apnea though, because I think you still sleep, correct?
Maybe
not always. Depends,
really?
like what you're talking about. My mother-in-law has it.
A lot of times it wakes you up because your body is waking itself up, like reminding you that you need to breathe.
I gotcha. Yeah, I can use that occasionally myself, but I hope you feel better, and hopefully we put you to bed over here, or just wait till Thursday nights, and then you can fall asleep on Thursday night podcast, which also serves the same purpose. But yeah, Hassan says Robbo works well with Gakpo, and I do agree to that. I think it's probably in his ear a lot more. I would assume, obviously, you can't hear that stuff, but based on like the work rate, I think so. But one thing with that midfield, I mean, Bickler, you were saying Gravenberg. I feel like Gally, the beauty of this midfield is, I think that you just can't go away from it. Like when you look at all three players, I know, like, we talked about Gravenberg. Soboslai, we were talking about how is he going to find a spot for himself. Now I think he's like one of the first names in with his running and ball winning and everything that he does throughout. And I know Maka gets a lot of crap, but he is, I keep saying this, he's kind of like the point guard over there. He controls the pace. He directs the traffic. A lot of these switches and stuff. Back in the day when people are like, oh, Henderson is always passing his sideways and stuff, would get the criticism. I feel like Maka does a lot of that dirty work when he's the one actually switching wings and stuff like that. He knows when to counter, when to hold up, because I really feel like you don't get that from Gravenberg and like Soboslai, for example. It feels like it's very complementary. Like those three guys together is like a perfect mix of everything in a midfield, and fitting in Wirtz over there is not as easy as it looks.
Well, Wirtz isn't a midfielder; he's an attacker.
That's one problem. But I think originally we all thought he would be the attacking part.
And I still think that's a really, I think you're right, Gally, but I think on the face of it, I think that's a really unpopular opinion because people want to play him centrally.
I understand. And even if you play him centrally, then he's a guy who plays behind two in the front and not with wide dynamic wingers. They're a perfect midfield if you're still playing through high attacking wingers / strikers that play on the outside. Like that midfield worked great because we basically ran it through Mo and Diaz on the outsides, or Gakpo and Mo on the outsides. And at the time, Diaz running through the middle. Even when Darwin was playing, he was basically Darwin, Jota. They were playing as false nines, basically. They were dropping back. They were linking up play. They were allowing Mo to be the most forward person. And they were just funneling everything through the right-hand side. And I get it. I think it works. They didn't buy Florian Wirtz so he would be Dominic Szoboszlai and run all over the pitch and make runs to cover ground for Mo Salah. And that's really what it comes down to. And now you made a comment a few minutes ago, Tim, about Mo Salah dropping back. So I think Salah had 20-something pressures in this match against Villa. And there's two parts to that. One, I think they were all told, get on this press and get together. Even you, Mo, you have to defend today. I think also Mo Salah licks his lips every time he sees Luka Dean because he knows I got this dude on toast and have for a decade. And like there's certain players he just feels like I can attack and I can exploit. And if you give me a chance, I'll show you. But he also had 20 plus pressures against Brentford, which makes me wonder if a message wasn't given to him, not like an ultimatum, like him and the manager had a talk last year that said, you don't have to defend as much as long as you score some goals. And then he got benched and he got talked about in the media being benched again. And he was almost like, hey, Skip, if you need me to do them pressures, if you need me to defend again, I'll do some defending. Like, just tell me what the order is. And because I think he also knows it's what helped. Last year, in the entirety of the entire season, he had 2 matches where he had 20 or more pressures. They both happened in August, with the second one being the AC Milan match. So I think it's something that was said last year, and I think there's a little difference in it. I think he has to work different because I think this side is going to change this year in the way that it's set up. And I think at some point, we're going to be playing some variation of a 4-4-2, 4-2-2-2. We're going to play something that is going to require Mo Salah to be a different type of player if he wants to come back from AFCON and play a huge part in the second half of the season. Because Paul's right. This thing doesn't work with Florian Wirtz playing in a 4-3-3 or a 4-2-3-1 and with the players we have. And I just think that we didn't spend all this money on Florian Wirtz to decide in a year and a half to sell him to Bayern or let him leave to some other club. Like, they're going to make this work. And my biggest problem is I still haven't seen a moment where it looks to me like McAllister and Wirtz can play on the pitch at the same time. I don't think it works. And it's why Paul and I have been saying it's probably the last year we see McAllister here at Liverpool. And it's sad to say that out loud. And we'll get to that in the second half of the season in the summer. But I just don't think these guys work together. And it's why I think we're going to see a lot more Curtis Jones, and why I think there'll be a big time midfielder bought, like a true number 6 that can play with Gravenberch or instead of him. It's sad to say it, but they've put their eggs in the basket of what the future is. We just have a weird season now where we have to live in the Mo Salah world in a side that doesn't fit him.
So the only thing I don't agree with that is I think it's unfair to judge defensive work rate by looking at pressures, because pressures only measure your press. I'm more talking about dropping, and which we didn't see much from Mo, but we did not expect him as much to do that. He is the outlet when we do the countering. But
That's
when you
fair.
talk about Gakpo, for example, he was dropping back a lot more than he used to, because you're gonna have
better
one
do
outlet, you
something.
can't have three outlets.
He's got to do something because he was god awful again.
Who, Gakpo?
Gakpo to me was the weakest player on the pitch on Saturday. And honestly, if you told me two things he did other than cut inside and kick it into the cop, I couldn't remember it because I thought Robertson made him look good a couple times. I didn't think Gakpo did anything. And he'll probably start against Madrid, but I could think of 3 different variations of that lineup I'd rather see moving forward. It's not working for me. He's got to find a way to impact matches more than just roaming around on the left-hand side of the pitch and not holding the ball up. He plays smaller than the 3 of us, and he's the 3rd biggest guy on the pitch.
Yeah, I mean, he looks like Brian says Gakpo really made me miss Diaz, because I mean there are 2 different players. What did you think about Gakpo? I think compared to everybody else, I probably partially agree with Gally, probably the most ineffective in some ways, but I think he did a lot more stuff. I think we're all sick of him cutting inside and taking that shot. It reminds me of like Curtis Jones trying to do that Everton goal over and over again kind of a deal. I mean, obviously it's a threat. If he used the overlap more, I think it would be a bigger threat. But aside from that, I thought he did a lot of stuff off the ball that he does not normally do, whether it's pressing, dropping back to help Robertson and stuff, which, you know, I know it doesn't stick out when we have the ball, but I thought he worked harder than normal.
Yeah, I think it doesn't. To me, the numbers are there for him, but like the sort of like results don't really match the stats with him. And I think the problem that I have with him is that he doesn't fit tactically with, okay, like what's happening right now is when you watch this side, there's this cavern in the midfield, because essentially what happens is you get 5 defenders and 5 offensive players.
Yep.
And I think that slot is all right with that, because I think he is really like, I think a lot of things that he's doing is intentionally bypassing the mids. But the problem with that is Gakpo's at his best when his back is to goal. And that's not what this system needs. Like he needs more direct pace and the ability to stay wide and allow that like run on the inside channel that Kirkez likes to make to happen regularly. Those things don't happen. He sucks in almost like the opposite of what Diaz used to do positionally. And what that's causing is that's jamming the midfield. And the biggest problem with Gakpo is he naturally takes up positions there that Florian Wirtz is supposed to occupy. And that's the big problem.
I think that's the thing. He's a winger, but he's not really a winger. We tried him in the middle. He couldn't do that either. So he
hated playing in the midfield.
Yes, and then he can't go out wide. It's like he's in that area exactly like where Wirtz would be. I guess the biggest thing is, and I think when I saw the lineup, it makes me think that, look, we have Wirtz, and like you're saying, Gali, you don't spend that much money to be like, well, I guess it didn't work after like 2 weeks. But at the same time, you got to stop the bleeding. It feels like for the short term, it's a lot smarter to say, hey, you know, let's go with this. This is the familiarity right here. This is the midfield right now, because it probably did not go well with the rest of the team, I would think. Who knows what works and what worked and what will work again. We just saw it this weekend, right? Just to make kind of like changes to get one guy in there just because we spend money on him. If I'm on the rest of that team, while I gather, like I understand why the club would want to, why Slot would want to, and all that kind of stuff. If I'm a player on that team, any player really, if I know what's going to work, and just because this dude came in and we're trying to put him in over there, we're kind of shuffling things around and screwing it up, I think I'm okay with going back to default settings and figure out a way slowly if putting them in. It almost felt like we were forcing it. It backfired, and we were going back to default settings.
I don't disagree, but we didn't have a choice because one of the default settings wasn't fit enough to play. He wasn't fit enough to play all preseason. So like McAllister has just now gotten to full fitness. And if Klopp if Slot doesn't do the Klopp thing, which is where I was going, and fully rotate the side, right? McAllister probably doesn't get the 60 plus minutes he needs against Palace to be able to have the legs in him to play 90 minutes. But I'm sorry, he's not starting tomorrow. There's no way he's run. In my opinion, there is no way he is running. Everyone keeps saying same 11, same 11. They played at 8 p.m. 8 p.m. with a 31-year-old who has gotten 2 starts at left back all season long, and a midfielder who has gotten 190-minute. Like, in my opinion, we'll talk lineups later, but like there'll be some rotation in this match, and I think that had a lot to do with why everybody played 90s. And one guy got a good 25, 30 minutes in his legs, because I think that guy probably starts and has a big role to play. And we've all said, right, Europe offers him more space. He looked really good. Yeah. The only thing I would take a little, and like you took a little umbrage with me about the pressures, I'll take a little umbrage there, is Wirtz hasn't been bad. Like, there is this misnomer that Wirtz has unsettled this side or made it worse. There have been a couple times where Wirtz, trying to shoehorn Wirtz in, trying to play Isak and Ekitike and figuring out what Mo Salah is doing in a side that doesn't fit him, in my opinion, has unbalanced and unsettled us more than anything Wirtz has done. Wirtz has created the most big chances in the Premier League this season. It's kind of not his fault that Mo Salah.
Yeah, but that's going forward. I'm talking about defensively, like basically balance in midfield. It has definitely screwed up the balance in midfield.
Well, it has changed the way they play for no questions asked. But part of the unbalance of the midfield was that the right back has been hurt, and we've had to play a midfielder at right back for half the season. That has a lot to do with the unbalance as well. Like McAllister, and I saw Paul nod his head, and maybe he can add to it. We've tried to play McAllister and Wirtz on the pitch together. I think it's a combined like 100 total minutes. We've conceded 5 goals in that amount of time. It's not just Wirtz's fault at that point, because McAllister has also been part of the problem on the left-hand side, which has hurt Kirkez and Virgil. And that comes back to your point about Gakpo not really tracking back a lot and defending. I think this is it's a team problem, but it's about the moving parts, and you try to get back to it. But I keep coming back to the fact that when I watch Wirtz on the pitch, and if you look at matches, everyone will say Liverpool's put 1 90-minute good performance in, and that was probably the other day. Everything else been 30 against Everton, the last 30 or the second 30 against Brentford. This period, a lot of those periods, the second half against Chelsea, a lot of that time coincides with the introduction of Florian Wirtz to their side. Like, he's actually helped them. They've scored more goals and conceded less when he's on the pitch than when he's not, but he's getting talked about because he's one of the new signings. And it's a weird thing that's happening this year. I've noticed, like, it feels like everybody wants to stay with what it was last year, but everyone questioned whether or not what we had last year worked after February on. Yet when they made all these changes and then went through them, nobody wants to deal with what they knew would happen, which is there was going to be pain in this much transition. And Paul's been saying it all along. He's spot on. We probably don't know what this side is till February 1st, and you just hope they're in touching distance at that point.
I mean, maybe AFCON will give us a glimpse of the future, if you will, like a long term. I think the issue is, I don't think it's versus play, but what I see, especially when you put him in midfield, Bickler, going back to what I was saying earlier, it just feels like the 3 midfielders we have with when Maka, Gravenberch, and Szoboszlai on the field, it's like a perfect puzzle piece where they all fit together. And I think defensively going forward and stuff, it's a lot more balanced. When you introduce Wirtz over there, as good as he is, I feel like something gets shifted enough where now the rest of the puzzle doesn't fit at all. And we're like lacking a lot more defensively, either because he's newer and it's kind of natural. I don't know if it's like the pace of the game that he's getting used to, but the challenge is, and I know, I'm not going to do it tonight, but being able to get somehow Wirtz in there and get the most out of his talents, especially going forwards and his counter pressing without losing the defensive balance. So and I think that's the thing, for that to work, it almost looks like going back to Gally saying everybody has to adjust a little bit. And it's kind of like when it went down, it feels a lot safer to go back to default settings and say, okay, this is what worked instead of everybody switching. And that's what I'm saying. If I'm a player on that team, I am kind of on board with that right now because you got to stop the bleeding.
Yeah. I think there's a number of things with Florian that stick out to me when I watch him. One is like, he's unquestionably the best player out there from a technical standpoint, and he has the highest upside. His ceiling, it's almost like it reminds me a lot of the Thiago thing, where like he has passes in his locker that nobody else has out there and people aren't even looking for. So you have that ability out there. The downside to Florian Wirtz is when he gives up, when he has it, because he's a chance sort of magnet and he's sort of a conductor with the ball, he's going to take risks and they're worth taking. The problem with it is with a player like that who makes those chances and takes those chances and comes with that amount of risk, what happens when it doesn't come off? It's why he doesn't work in a midfield three, because when he gives it up, you immediately put yourself in a spot on the counter with two midfielders. I don't think so. A couple things. He never works in a midfield with Maka because to me, they're both slow. They're both kind of slow.
100%.
Right. Yeah. Like you need more. If those are your 2-3 midfielders, you're dead in the water from a pace standpoint in the Premier League. The other thing is because of that risk, I don't think he works in midfield three in general. He should be starting where Gakpo is, in my opinion.
I think one thing I remember, like Slot, I was talking about this morning. Slot was talking about this early last season in terms of not only it's important to realize where you're going to be defending and where you're going to be attacking. When he was, I think he was probably asked about, club system versus system and all that. What he was talking about is like, you got to know, going back to what Bickler is saying, when you take that risk, you got to know what's going to happen when you lose the ball. Where everybody's going to be where everybody's going to be when you lose the ball. So if I try this pass here, if it does not work, that's okay, because he's here, I'm here kind of a deal. Whereas I feel like he has not been in that role or hasn't had that weight, that responsibility, more like a free moving guy where he can do whatever. If it doesn't work out, that's fine, because I got the other midfielders behind me still. Like this week, that's my worry with Gravenberch this year is I feel like he's taken some of those risks that he would not in the past. And he almost gave away a goal, which was a brutal time to give away a goal. I think it was the 70th, 75th minute or something like that. It's going to put your heels back and everything, where he just lost the ball unnecessarily. He took off, like knowing – you see who's in front of you. Szoboszlai is in front of you, so you should not take off. I think Wirtz does that a lot more regularly without considering where everybody is defensively.
I think he was earlier in the year. I saw a lot of that. You saw it really bad in the Everton match where he comes on and then he loses the ball on the wing, and I'm like, all right, you can't do that in this match. But then again, I've also seen him lose the ball. I think the Crystal Palace match, he loses the ball on the edge of his own box. Like he tries to make a move, which he should do, to Paul's point. That's what he's on the pitch to do, create in that type of space. He goes to make something happen. He loses the ball and literally nobody bails him out. And Palace goes 70 yards up the pitch in 2 passes and they're in. And luckily they don't score. But like, I think those are the moments where people are like, oh, Wirtz is soft. He'll never pick up the pace of the Premier League. Like, I saw Kevin De Bruyne do that 100 times. I just saw Rodri kill the person 5 seconds later. Yeah. Or, before that, it was Fernandinho. And for us, it was Fabinho, right? Like when Mane would do that on the edge of the box. Like, I do think he needs to be in some form of a midfield 4, or he needs to be a 10 playing behind 2 central attacking players, or he needs a free role. I mean, I hate to say it, like, because I don't want to be the guy that gets crushed, because God knows I get crushed in every comments that we have for being the guy who advocates for this side playing in a back 3. But the more you look at this side and look at the talent they have and the players they bought, they really look like maybe they should have hired Alonso and just played his Leverkusen back 3 with the high, pacey fullbacks, wing backs on both sides, Wirtz floating all over the pitch, and just have Gravenberch and Szoboszlai suck everything up in the middle of it.
Yeah.
And then Ekatike and hopefully Isak just scoring goals. I know it sounds simplistic. And in that back three, maybe you would even have another midfielder like a Wharton and you just drop Gravenberch in the middle of it and tell him to go forward when you can. Like, my problem is Gravenberch got the itch to score goals. His dad was talking about it in the offseason. His dad's giving interviews the other day about how he advised him to shoot more. I think he wants to
about it today.
I think he wants to add goals and output to his game. And that's a little scary in this setup because we saw it. They're up 2-0. We're playing in complete control. He plays the ball into Ekatike. He should just take 2 steps backwards and let the attack flourish. Instead, he comes into the attack, making that late run, trying to do like a little like 1-2. They lose the ball. And next thing you know, it's 4-on-3 going the other way. I'll give everyone, including him, credit. They were sprinting back and they got back to defend it. But like if they concede there, it's a completely different final 15 minutes of that match. And honestly, if that match ends 2-1, I think we're having a completely different conversation today going in. Like it was so important. It was almost more important to keep a clean sheet than it I'm not going to say than it was to get 3 points, but it was really freaking important to keep a clean sheet.
I think so. For confidence wise, I mean, I think especially for Mamardashvili, who I thought had like a pretty darn solid game.
Can we talk about that save? The save on the Matty Cash cross?
Yes.
Because that was not a shot, that was a cross. And if you watch it in replay, he actually starts to take a step towards the back post because he assumes it's a cross. So he's getting his body right to like, and then he notices the ball go off and he keeps his feet right to get all the way top corner and knock that thing over. If that thing goes into like a massive deflection off Virgil, like it's just a completely separate game. And I even thought the 2-handed pairing to the outside that he did on the Morgan Rogers shot, that was a really good. And Morgan Rogers is a class player.
Yes. By the way, it helps. Like he made that save, like the Matty Cash one. It helps that the guy's like 12 foot tall or something like that. It's just like, he just went like this. I mean, the one that hit the post, you see him go full stretch. You're like, dude, I mean, there's no way that can go in, I guess, right? Like, because he's like full stretch in a good spot too. But yeah, it was important for him to get that over there. But Solo was saying McAllister's being linked to Real Madrid. That's why they brought in Wirtz. What do you guys think? I think, down the road, that's the future. And the future, I mean, I agree with Gally Bickler in terms of like that sounds when you make his ideal 11 like the 3-5-2 or like whatever like formation
or a 4
in the midfield. The 3 in the back, it does sound great. The only problem is when you have 3 center backs, obviously it doesn't work, but that is probably the future, going back to what Solo was saying, where you do have Wirtz in a more free role because I mean you did not invest in him this much, but that setup does not have really a spot for Mo in my mind, at least.
No,
definitely not a spot for Gakpo again in my mind. I mean, you can force it, but it's not going to be a consistent thing. And I think you can throw that out there for a game, but then when you try to rotate, you're going to have Endo as center back and stuff, and I'm going to short out over here when I see that. So.
Yeah, part of me wants to go to a back 3 just to watch you for a couple of months and see how that goes. Yeah, it's I don't know where we're going with this. We're gonna see a lot of changes, right? I think it's pretty interesting. There's not a lot of years where you have a period mid-season that this far in advance is going to be a critical juncture in this team's history in terms of what the next iteration looks like. And I think most of us that have been paying attention and talking about this know that like that AFCON period is going to be absolutely the most important part of this year for like what this side is and what it looks like moving forward. Because I mean, there's lots of options that we see here. I keep coming back to the fact that I think Frimpong could be an important player down the stretch here, playing up top on the right, in giving you an injection of pace. It'd be interesting to see. I think the links of McAllister and Real Madrid have less to do with anything outside of the fact that people look at form and function on the side, and then they just draw links for chat. right? Like you look at, he's the kind of the odd man out right now. He was going to be considered one of the first names on the team sheet, and he's been in bad form. So what do you think? Well, he's going to probably move, right? Because Verts is coming in. Like, so I think that's just kind of like people making assumptions based on narratives that are being written mid-season. I don't know how much there is to that, but I do think that like if you look at this midfield and you look at like chops and changes and what can go, like McAllister makes sense to move, Gakpo makes sense to move, and we know that Mo is going to move whether he wants to or not in a year or two, just because you got to look at like the science behind it is that you can't stay young and fast forever.
Yeah, unfortunately, I
If
found
you
that out
go
the
to
hard way.
that, if you go to those if you go to more of a 4-4-2 setup or some type of a variation at the back, however you want to, 4-3-1-2, you can come up with whatever maturation you want, right? You could see a world where if Connor Bradley can stay fit and figure out how to, grow up a little bit mentally and just be the everyday right back, you could see a world where the most wide right midfielder of that four is Frimpong in many matches, like playing with Bradley behind him and playing with Isak and Ekatike up top, and then Verts in behind, floating into the pockets. And he works well with Frimpong. And then you have your runners in the middle of it, like Gravenberch and Soboslai. And maybe on the left someday it's Rio out there playing that midfield type role, or even, I hate to say it, they buy a different left back and they go with Kirkez. I also think you'll be surprised. I do believe they have, and who knows after the injury, but they had huge hopes for Leone. They didn't buy him like he was like an investment to sell. They bought him to be like a linchpin long-term solution. And I still think they're going to try to get Mark Gahey on January 1st. And if Gahey were here right now, I said it the other day, I wouldn't be shocked if he was playing right back at times in the last few weeks. Like, I think they would have played him out at right back the way we all screamed to play Gomez at times. Like, or he might have already supplanted Konate and given you a different option, or allowed you to play Gomez more at right back or even left back. I just think this team has also suffered a shit ton of injuries that rightfully we've done a good job on this channel of not using as excuses. But like, when everyone got mad that he didn't play anyone against Palace, nobody said if Allison was healthy, you would have had Mamadashvili in goal, Leone and Gomez, Frimpong, like Jones. You could have filled almost an entire team with the, Isak would have played. So you would have had all these players and you wouldn't have had to play the kids. And we can all bang on Kirkez all we want. And I love that we got to 42 minutes without shitting on him, which is a record for a Liverpool podcast. But like, Kirkez played in that match against Palace, and he was there were 3 players who had never made an appearance for the club older than him at the start of the match.
Yeah.
And I think that gets left behind. Like, he moved to the biggest club in the world and the champions of England. And yes, he's, a guy who would do the gun show and flex in front of your girlfriend after you told her she's your girlfriend. So he's easy to hate and kind of punch in the face for being young and dumb and full of, you know what? But like, I just think like this is going to come good. I genuinely believe. I know there was a comment a long time ago in the chat. Did they buy the right profile of players? They might have missed on a player or two for this moment. But the problem is they bought all these players to add to the players they're going to buy over the next 2 windows to compete in 2 years, because they still think they can compete, to your point, Tim, with the guys they had last year. I do think the manager made a little bit of a mistake of trying to play with too many of his toys up front.
Yeah.
I forget where it was. I think it was the Anfield Wrap. One of the ladies said, it's like you opened all the presents on Christmas and you got the coolest clothes across the entire world, but you put them all together. Like, you wanted to wear every piece of clothes you bought on Christmas, so you literally look like Punky Brewster, and like nobody knows what you're wearing and the outfit will never match or work. And it's not a bad analogy, because it's kind of what he did for like the first 4 matches. The problem is we won them. And then when we started losing, he didn't know how to get out from under it.
I would also argue that, in my opinion, and I'd like, this shouldn't be a hot take. It probably will be, but I think Kirkez carries inherently the lowest risk of all the players that we bought, including Beards.
Well, he's a left back. That's what he does.
By the way, I mean,
well, he was also Premier League Team of the Year last year. Like, people are talking like he's,
and he was the cheapest player we signed.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I honestly, like, it's a more long-term thing. I think, first off, a couple of things. Like AR says, if Van Dijk gets injured, here's the problem, and I think we come to the same thing with any of these transfers. And let's not talk transfers for God's sakes. I got like another like month or two to live here, but I mean the biggest thing is this is not the FIFA Ultimate Team over here. You're not going to have another Van Dijk come in for Van Dijk. There is no team in the world that can do that. You're not going to have another Ali who's going to come in for Ali, because then that guy would not be there. We freaking sold Kelleher because he wanted to play on a team. So if you had an Ali sitting on the bench, it's not going to happen. He's going to want to go. So I think this whole assumption of, oh, we're not deep enough because we don't have like 6 VVD clones sitting on the sideline is just freaking like obnoxious and unrealistic. And, by the way, don't even bring this up, because Costa can't even get in Roma right now. He's rotting on the bench over there. He
has to be winding you up. That has to be an absolute wind up right there.
I don't know. Hey, man, like you got me. Don't get me started on this. Don't get me started on this. Oh, Jesus. Okay, so a couple of things. Before we kind of like do the lineups and stuff, real quick though, because we got to get to the lineups. I don't know if you guys heard about like the Van Dijk talk about Van Dijk interview post-match after the Villa game, where he was talking about some of like the ridiculous takes, and they are freaking ridiculous. Solo is in the chat. He knows I tried to fight the good fight, but there's so much bullshit out there about people, the slots out gang, which should be just taken out, lock the door, leave them out there, kind of a deal. But what did you make of that, Bickler? Because we've talked about Van Dijk's captaincy and stuff, and we said, like maybe he's not the guy for when things are going bad. But just listening to that, it sounds like he might not be the guy that we watch in front of the TV, and maybe we don't like seeing what we want out of the captaincy then. But it sounds like he is the guy who behind the scenes can talk to these guys and say, hey, man, you just got to chill. Like a guy like Kirkes, especially, for example, that's what kind of reminded me, like where he will have the credentials to say, hey, man, this is how this stuff goes. This is how these internet nuts are. You got to close your mind to that and stuff, where he's doing some more brotherly captaincy behind the scenes that maybe we don't see as much on the pitch.
Well, for sure. I mean, anytime you're tall, handsome, and extremely good at what you do for a living, people are going to listen, right? Like, I mean, I just think that he's a cool
I love how
dude.
you described me.
Yeah. Galley towering at 5'7". Anyway, like
I tower over you two by about a quarter of an inch.
That's why it works, dude. Like I said, we'd all be like sweet, like chimney swifts back in the
3
1800s.
Stooges. Yeah,
Just
more like
shove
it.
us up the chin. It's crazy that we don't have a heating and air company. Like we'd be so good.
We would be the greatest HVAC. We would be like the three musketeers cleaning your vents.
Timucin just
who's
supervised.
going in today? Like,
Well, we know it'd be me and Galley. You'd be supervising from the van, dude. Be like, I'm doing the admin work. Anyway, it doesn't surprise me. I mean, I think he's a cool dude. I think people listen to Van Dijk. I think the biggest thing for me is like behind that calm demeanor, and I think sort of he does have the ability to sort of stabilize and stuff. I've just been massively disappointed by how his body language has been and how he's been when we're not at our best, which is when you need the best of a captain. And I just don't think that we've gotten that from him consistently enough. It was better last match, right? But we won, right? Like we're winning. We were never down. Like I don't want to see the finger pointing in a lot of the stuff that I see from him when the moments aren't good. But yeah, I have no doubt that behind the scenes he is a good teammate and a good captain.
Yeah, see, I mean, we talked about this briefly before, but I just kind of wanted to get your take, Gally, on his like ridiculous takes, because I think we judge according to the situation. Henderson did a lot of freaking finger pointing and would bite your head off if you didn't press when you should press and all that kind of stuff. And we kind of praised him for it. He was like a coach on the pitch, telling people, yelling people where to go and stuff like that. And haven't been a center back. You got to fucking yell at your backs every once in a while to get to place. But I feel like, we kind of judge it when things are going wrong. That's viewed as negative. Like they do this in professional sports over here, for example, Gally, like the NFL, for example, when a quarterback who's a winner, when Tom Brady throws the tablets, right? It's like, he wants to win so much. You can see the passion and stuff. When a rookie or a guy who is kind of like losing at the time throws the tablet, it's very immature. He's not going to win like this. He doesn't have the calm and demeanor. I mean, we just judge it based on the incident.
Let's also be real. we're talking about English punditry, who's not ever going to, on an unbiased basis, come out and be like, let's support Liverpool. So if Wayne Rooney is going on what is like the basically the most popular podcast in all of England right now, like Wayne Rooney's crushing it in the media over there because he's actually an entertaining, like, fat SOB, and people are like, shit, man, this guy had a personality. He didn't say anything for 20 years because Fergie was smart enough not to let him talk because he'd get himself canceled. But now he's really entertaining and everyone likes his show. And he called out Virgil. He said that he thought that there was a lack of leadership from the side. Looked like at times that the way he was treating Kirkez was too hard. And I think part of it is it's not even Virgil. I don't think Virgil said the right things about Kirkez. He's definitely bit his head off on the pitch, but he's bit everybody's head off on the pitch this year. It's not just Kirkez. He yells at Robertson. He spent all of last season screaming at Robertson.
Yeah,
I mean, we talk about it all the time. Like,
at Robertson.
But he yells at anybody. So, but you know what it is? People calling him out on it, to Paul's point, when you're losing, and to your point, when you're losing, people call you out on yelling at your teammates, right?
Yeah.
But what makes it easier for Liverpool supporters is to be like, well, it's because this Kirkez kid is just shite. And if he's shite, look at what the captain has to do. Look at how much more assured he was. And he didn't yell at anyone yesterday because to Paul's point, we were winning 2-0 all match long. And it's a lot easier not to yell at guys. Like, I'd like to see tomorrow, regardless of who starts, and I'm sure with 10 minutes to go, we'll get to the lineups.
Yep.
Maybe that's a good segue. I'd like to see how the captain handles tomorrow if we're 2-0 down in 20 minutes in, and whether people are getting yelled at. And then he's still talking about calmer heads prevailing. I'm fine with his leadership style. I questioned it a couple years ago. He won the goddamn league. He lifted the trophy. He helped the side get through an unenviable task in the summer. And I think he's actually held himself really, really well with that whole thing and trying to lead guys and also give them space to continue to talk about it when they want to, and maybe be the guy who's willing to talk about it, whether he wants to or not, because he knows the guys in that dressing room want to talk about it or want it to be known that it's still a factor. So, I just think there needs to be a couple more leaders out there with him. And maybe that comes to having so many new players. I've seen a little bit more of it from Szoboszlai lately.
Yeah.
Chatting up.
Yes.
I think he was chatting up Ekitike a lot in the last match, telling him different places, because Ekitike, as great as he's been our best signing. He was not great against Villa. He did good things, and the header was amazing. Too bad he's offsides. But then again, he probably shouldn't be offsides in that spot. He can see the line in front of him. But I think Szoboszlai can step into that role. I don't think Gravenberch will ever step into that role.
No,
I think Bradley might step into that role once he actually finds his own role within the side. But that takes time, and I'm proud of him for not just asserting himself there. So I like what Virgil's doing. The problem is there's too many guys who are just aloof that just go for the ride, like Kanate, like Gravenberch, like Gakpo. In some ways, Ekitike right now. And then Mo is Mo. So I think until you can get that 11 that is your 11 and you can build together, like in some ways, I think Kirkez will be a chirper. He just has to earn his stripes. And I think that's the problem. We have so many young players trying to earn their stripes in a very veteran side. But I think it was a good call by you. And fuck the haters, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like, he was barking. What I really liked is he went and blocked a cross coming in. It was the left side's fault, but what I liked is he looked in the middle and barked in the middle, because if he didn't block that cross, people were not where they were supposed to be. And I was like, yes, that's what you got to do. So, I mean, I think here's another thing. I mean, I think we have to admit that it's a lot easier to bark around and nobody's going to question it when you're freaking perfect. I mean, literally playing perfect, could not be any better, mistake-free and stuff like that. Nobody dribbles past you and all that kind of crazy stats and all that. Let's face it, I mean, obviously he has not been as good as he normally is. He's not his normal perfect self. So it obviously there's more criticism to that. But let's get to this game real quick. I was talking about it this morning. So along with your lineup prediction, give me that thought as well, Bickler. I'm more on the camp of, I think Ryan was saying it in the comments earlier, I'm somehow totally okay with the draw tomorrow. If we're going to rotate at all, which I think we will. I mean, Gally is right. They're not going to play the same 11 again in like 3 days. I would rather look at who I really want to go against City, and I want to be fresh. I know he mentioned, it's like another 4 days and stuff, but I think the City game is much more important than the Real game.
Yeah, and I think this all hinges on what the plan is for Florian Wirtz versus City, right? I mean, I think that's really what this is going to hinge on. If I'm looking at my starting 11, I'm making some rotational changes. I think there are spots in midfield and in the back line that you can't rotate just because you just don't have enough quality and bodies right now to do it. I think for this match, I'm probably across that back line. It'll be really interesting. I would start Kirkez versus Real Madrid, mainly because I want Robbo in the City match. I think he gives you more stability. I think he gives you more experience in a match like that. I think this is a spot where I'm starting Kirkez, probably Van Dijk and Konate in the back line, even though I'd love to get some rotation in there. And I think the right back is going to be a really, really interesting call because if you do Bradley, you're playing him three times in a week. And I don't know that you want to do that with Bradley. But this does seem like a manager who is very resistant to the idea of playing Gomez at right back. So that's where I get in this weird spot where I'm like, man, if he plays Szoboszlai right back, I swear to God. So we'll see what happens here. I would probably go Gomez at right back there. I just don't see the manager doing that. So I don't know what's going to happen there. Midfield, I'm going to go Gravenberch. I'm going to go Szoboszlai. I'm going to go Wirtz. And I know we just talked about how this doesn't work. The only way that I could make this work is if you've got a front three of Gakpo, Ekiteke, and Chiesa, and then you have Wirtz in there. You have some flexibility. You're able to put Maka in towards the second half and give him 30. I think that's just what makes sense to me.
So wait, did you put Chiesa instead of Mo?
I did.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
I kind of put him instead of Gakpo, but Gally,
yeah, that was my original. I think I said it on Saturday when we were all chatting in Discord at one point. I said, this 90 minutes and no subs to me, almost to your point, Tim, picks the City lineup, which is the exact same lineup. Yeah. Maybe Wirtz finds his way in. It's a fight, right? But ultimately, and I don't even think I would start him there at the City ground at not the City ground, at the Etihad. I think I would go with I think I would go with the same lineup Paul did. I would probably start Mo on the right and I would start Chiesa on the left. I don't think he will. So again, maybe it's Chiesa on the left and McAllister in the midfield. I think it's gamble rushing McAllister out there, and that would be 3 times in 1 week after playing his first 90 and 60 against Palace. Seems a lot. I know everyone wants Robertson, and I understand why. But if you start Robertson in this match, you're starting him against City because you're saying to Kirkez that you're not. And if you do that and you play him in 3 straight matches to start and then send him off to Scotland for 2 high-intensity matches that they're going to run him 90-plus minutes as the captain, I think you are just absolutely playing with fire when you add in he played 70 minutes against Palace. You're basically saying, like, we're willing to lose this guy. And if you lost Robertson, how much more pressure does that put on Kirkez? And you brought Kirkez in for matches like this. I think you start him against Real Madrid, and it also gives him the confidence. You don't want him starting at Manchester City, in my opinion. That's a match you tell that kid to watch from the bench, and if we need you at the end, you'll come in. So for me, you start what I think is basically the best 11. I do think he'll start Gakpo at left wing and Mo at right and not play Chiesa. I think it's time Chiesa gets a start in a meaningful game, and what better way than this? Real Madrid's a weird animal, though. I don't know if you guys have watched a lot of them this year. Like, they're going to play at us with, 2 strikers total. They're not going to play Rodrigo. They're barely play. They're going to play Timucin and Bellingham on the left, and he inverts into the middle, and he overlaps with Camavinga's so important. They got Valverde playing right back. It's a weird side, but that back four can be got at. So this is a match where I'm go hell for leather from the moment one. I wouldn't even be upset if they won the coin toss and spun us around and told us to go to the cop first. I could see it being like when City did that to us in the 2-leg Champions League tie.
Yep.
And Ox scored the 2 in the first half. Big opportunity. And
it was.
like we went for it and we were 3-0 up, and then the tie was dead. Like I could see this being one of those matches, or I could honestly see this being the other type of match, which is 0-0 at 70 minutes, and Vinny Jr. fucking breaks my heart again.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those weird things where I think with some players you can say, just hang in there because the international break is coming afterwards. You're going to give us 90. But there are some players like Robertson where the age does not let you do that, even if they wanted to. Like, you might be able to get that out of Gakpo if you really want to, but I don't think you can with Robertson.
The other thing just to keep in mind is, manager did say in the presser today, Curtis Jones was 100% fully in training last 2 days, which means he's available for the bench tomorrow, which means he could be the guy that is the outside shout to give you the fourth midfielder against City like he did last year. And we keep talking about, like, if you go to that flat four, Curtis Jones could absolutely be the widest of the left.
Yes.
And give you that width and go up the pitch, give you an outlet, but not go too far and be able to give you that possession. Like, that might be the best chance he has of ever being an everyday regular in this 11, is if he goes to a 4-4-2 and he can secure that left-hand spot by himself. And then just think how great it'll be. We won't have to yell at Gakpo. We'll be able to yell at Jones for cutting in and doing
which everybody will be on board with that. But yeah, I think, like John, to be honest, the right back, whoever is there, you can throw.
Watch it be Curtis Jones.
They're going to have a yellow card and they'll have to be subbed anyway by, if you put Bradley out there, he's going to get a yellow in the first half. If you put Gomez out there, he's going to get a yellow in the first half. So they might be kind of like, like splitting it, but we could see, I think these two games in that sense, like the Real and City games, are teams that we like playing against in terms of how they play, similar to what Villa did. I think Villa Unai could have said, you know what, let's play long ball and get these guys. That's what gets them. But I think Madrid and City have too much of an ego and pride for them to do what they normally do, regardless of what your weakness is. And I think that kind of like helps us in this game. But early predictions, well, not that early. I guess the game is tomorrow in less than 24 hours here. Bickler.
I'll go 1-0. Soboslai goal. I think it's going to be KG.
Man, that's a good bet.
I would love
I don't care.
I would love a back-to-back clean sheet, but I don't think it happens when you have Kylian Mbappe, Vinny Jr., and Bellingham, players like that on the other side. So I'm going to say that we find a way to squeak one out. We win 2-1, and we give me a chance to get my prediction from Friday.
I'll go with the 2-1. Actually, yeah, I don't see they get a penalty or something stupid like that in the box.
It's Europe.
With the players they have. Yes, watch your arms and legs. Keep them inside the vehicle because, yes, it is Europe. You might get a call. Brian Sheldon says 1-1. I was going to go with that, but I have a streak of trying to be staying positive with my prediction.
We still haven't drawn a match.
2-1.
We still haven't drawn a match this year, and I would like to keep it that way. I know it sounds stupid, but like just keep going for wins and hopefully get less losses. It's kind of a nice opportunity.
Some people might lose their heads, but if it was a 1-1, I would be more than content with that and walk away with it and say, let's go get City. And I think that would be a great way to go into the international break. If you're able to pull that off, that will be a great way to go to the international break. But let's see. I'll be back Wednesday morning. The panel show is here tomorrow night. I don't know how much they'll address the Champions League, but I'll be back Wednesday morning. I'm sure we'll talk a lot about this game. Look ahead to the City game, hopefully talking about a win and all that kind of stuff, so I don't have to deal with the head cases getting Slot fired and Stevie G as a manager and all that kind of stuff. Have a great day, everybody, and we'll see you guys next week. Take care.